In the bottom left-hand side of Golden Wall, we do have our red Protoss player from Makers. This is Classic. Up against the blue Terran. In the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have got ourselves FanTaSy. Again, how's everyone doing, guys? Hope you're all doing well. Good to see everyone in the chat. If you're enjoying the stream, do consider hitting that follow button. See when we go live again in the future with more StarCraft 2 games. Of course, if you're really enjoying, don't forget you can support the channel as well by subscribing, donating, and cheering. Helps us to keep the stream running. It's been a nice, quiet day in that front so far, so yeah, anything goes a long way to helping us out, really. So yeah, otherwise welcome, and let's enjoy some Golden Wall. So again, this is the map that has like this kind of top half of the map to kind of play on, and then if you mine out this area, you can take the bottom half of the map as well. And it looks like FanTaSy is going to take this base down here as a natural expansion. So this is already kind of concerning for Classic because it's very difficult for him to scout this. FanTaSy does give up a bit of eco early to long distance mine out these minerals. They are 20 mineral patches, by the way, so it does take a little while to mine through those. So yeah, it takes a little while to mine through those, but overall, we get ourselves into a position where FanTaSy gives that up, but again, he kind of keeps information away from Classic, so it's hard for Classic to know exactly what's kind of going on here. You know, it's hard for him to make any sort of call in that regard, so as you see this Reaper popping up is going to move forwards and is going to pick off a probe. Probe will go down. Reaper just nibbling its way through that Nexus, and we are going to be seeing the Chrono Boost dropping. So again, the Chrono Boost up and running here early on as Robo Facility comes up as well. It's about halfway done across the map at depth. Trying to make it up, but obviously it walled off, so really not much for this Adept to find out at all. I guess also just by building your expansion back here keeps any sort of, you know, Protoss harassment from kind of bothering you. I wonder if we see something like if FanTaSy takes like the third base down here and Classic expands up here, we're just gonna have like completely different games playing out. This could be so weird and funky. Obviously Classic, it's a decision for him if he wants to mine out these minerals to give himself access down to this bottom side. So we'll see if that's a decision he wants to commit to, as we do have the Reaper pressing forwards. Just gonna be chilling out at the front. 7D, how you doing, buddy? You really enjoying the stream and you just decided to hit the follow button? That's what I love to hear, buddy. That's what I love to hear. Follow button is my favorite button. Oh, it's windy today. I just got attacked by my curtain because of the wind. Yeah. Immortal is being Chrono Boosted out at the moment. As we do see the medevac is coming up in a moment or two as well. Going to lift up those couple of Widow Mines. So 2 Widow Mines going to jump into the medevac here. And that's going to start. So we are going to start seeing that medevac just heading across the map to apply a little bit of pressure. It's a pretty standard opening so far from FanTaSy. Scan as well. Picks off that Observe. Obviously, Classic was able to use this to see the fact that this expansion down here has been taken. I'm really intrigued to see if FanTaSy takes this base down here as his third. Or sorry, Classic as his third down here. Or if he expands up here. And if FanTaSy continues to expand down here as well. Because again, it's tough for Protoss armies to get down here. You can maybe mine out these minerals over in the center. That kind of feels like about it. Widow Mines burrowing, and you're going to see them unburrowing, reburrowing again. Stalker warping in gets blown up actually, so it's pretty painful. A probe goes down too. Not a bad setup with the Widow Mine because it caused so much lost mining time as well. Really nicely done actually so far by FanTaSy. And as he escapes up to this upper side, obviously still 2 Widow Mines alive, so still has those to use. We have a Warp Prism on the other side as well, also trying to find some entryways. Colossus on the way up, so that's going to be one way of getting this started and into the mid game. So Colossus coming through, 3 probes going down, or 3 SCVs going down. This drop feeling quite successful. Raven's scary in this scenario because if the Raven drops an interference matrix, suddenly the Immortal can't lift back into that warp prism because it's disabled, right? And suddenly you lose the Immortal. So actually the Raven's a very good unit to scare this drop away. Because that Immortal will die if it gets cornered in by Marines, right? So it's it's really funky. Obviously the Warp Prism is quite nice here in general as well because it gives you that potential to actually get onto this side of the map where FanTaSy has his base. Okay, so Classic is going to keep expanding up the map here. So Classic's on the top side of the map. Is FanTaSy going to stick on these 3 racks? Is there a third CC coming in? Obviously, wherever he builds the third CC already gives you a bit of information as to where he might be looking to truly expand. I wonder if this base is just a little bit too far kind of out there. He could maybe take this base if he just liked the gold minerals, if he only wanted minerals, but in TVP you generally do need a good amount of gas to be able to produce, into kind of double starport units to turn away Colossus, etc., whether it's Vikings or Liberators. Raven tanks and Marines moving through the bottom side. Why isn't the subscription button my favorite button? Because when people hit the subscribe button, sometimes they don't hit it, and then, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. Alright, here we go, though. Seriously, moving through. This is, gonna be Widowmine's Marines and tanks setting up. Yes, if he's going down across the map, the Warp Prism actually coming into play here as FanTaSy sets up for like kind of a large attack across. Did he not bring enough SCVs to mine through here? Or was that just not the plan? Is the plan just to, to like elevate her up eventually? Well, that's kind of funky though, as we do see the same time Classic pushing up into the main base. Okay, he's he built a refinery, so he is slowly mining this out with the gas trick. Still takes a little while. Again, just that SCV having a little bit of a derpy moment right there. FanTaSy with the slowest mining out of a pathway ever. Meanwhile, across the map, the entire base of FanTaSy is just in trouble. Obviously, Classic can clean all of this up, then recall back home. Interference Medics on the Colossus, but the Force Fields, I think, buy enough time. Oh my god, the tank sieging up is going to block the other tanks. He's going to lift these up with the Medivacs. This just wasn't as smooth as I think FanTaSy wanted this to be. I like the idea, but obviously back at home, everything's going wrong. Yeah, I like the idea of it, but in the end, it's just not really working out, as we are going to be having the Nexus here going to get picked off. That's something, but of course, you've got no bases mining at home, FanTaSy, right? So, this is why Classic is just like, yeah, you know what, take my Nexus, I don't mind. As long as he has enough production elsewhere to keep on producing units, he should be able to deal with this. Still has this army on this side as well. He's finally going to recall that back home. And that obviously means that now Classic just has an overwhelming army to come and deal with this now. Getting this ready to go, as we do see another few probes going down. This army moving up the ramp, and here he is, Classic pressing forwards. That's going to be seen. Zealots charging straight on through. Marines going to get picked off. And Classic with just a bit too much here. GG from FanTaSy. Nice idea from FanTaSy. Scores or anything like that, and it's not going to be revealed until we cast the games a little bit later on. Top left hand side here, up 1-0, our red Protoss player. This from Makers is Classic. Up against the blue Terran in the bottom right hand side, we have FanTaSy here on Nightshade. You guys want me to say it again? I love this map. It's so pretty. It really is. There's some very pretty maps in this map pool. I really like a lot of these maps that are just very simplistic with a couple of nice little colors in them. It's nice. Could throw down the mules, mine the wall faster. Oh yeah. That would have been a strategy and a half, actually. So, yeah, just seeing this building up at home, getting this set to start. Probe will come over and just see the Rex in the base. Obviously, there's no backdoor bases or anything crazy for FanTaSy to try and utilize here. I would have loved to see if FanTaSy just continued to expand through that bottom side. How on earth that entire game plays out. You expand through the... It's almost like, what if the Protoss expands through the bottom side, because then they're just super safe from Terran pushes. Then I guess you kind of not, because the Terran just comes through the bottom side eventually themselves. So, yeah. Bit of a funky scenario there. As we are getting ready to go into this game 2. Obviously just expansions on either side here on Nightshade. One of the standard maps means that you get a nice easy free... Not easy free base, but the third base is, you know, not difficult to take. But it's not like a, you know, in-base expansion or anything along those lines. The rush distances are very, you know, very kind of regular as well. It's not super quick to attack. It's not, you know, Dusk Towers or something, right? So, yeah, we always have two of the categories in the TLMC are always standard and macro. And the macro maps, obviously, these kind of larger maps. What is Classic doing? Why has he got 4 workers in this gas? He had 5 before and he fixed it. And he still hasn't fixed the 4th one. Bit of a mistake there from our Protoss player. As we are going to be seeing the Reaper just being chased away. This is not a Force 1 map. This is just the top right and bottom left of the base of the map are just regular bases. I don't think we have any Force spawn maps in this map pool, actually. You guys really did a good job of making sure Blizzard never allowed a Force spawn map again. Reaper is moving around a little bit to have a little bit of a look to see what's going on. Maybe a Banshee and a couple of Hellions on the way up, so FanTaSy going for a bit more of a factory starport opener this time around. I guess last time you had the Raven, etc. as well, but looking for a bit more aggression with this early on this time. Reaper hops up to the high ground. Ooh, shot down by the Stalker. Italian's also just cruising around, gonna hit this Adept at the front. Is gonna break through. So actually is in, but for how much damage? I mean, he's gonna commit to the sentry, which isn't bad. Jumps up into the main. Maybe like a couple of probes at most here, I think. There's gonna be one. Only the one, so really not much damage done. But I guess in the Adept and the sentry. The sentry is really nice to pick off. Good defense by Classic. Option to wall here. Obviously slowed this down, even if it did still lose the Adept, you know. It slowed down the attack, and from there, there was another nice warp in the main. The SimCity here is very good. You know, can move his probes away, but also if he needs to, you can warp it in, boom, blocks it off. Really good SimCity. One of the real kind of masterclass of playing Protoss is just setting up your buildings in the right way. Really nice to see that already just here on a... It's kind of like some players really struggle with it, I feel. Just players like Zest, I feel, really struggle with like walling off on new maps and stuff like that. Someone like Classic's just like, yeah, okay, you know, new map, boom. This is how I'm going to start my SimCity. Going to be perfectly defended in case this happens or that happens. He's not going to be able to SimCity his way out of a Cloak Banshee, however, so unfortunately this will come in for 5 probes already. There is a shield barrier in the main, but there's just not tech down to detect this. Oh, sorry, there is a robo, so there's an observer coming over. Stalkers actually go into the natural, blinking very aggressively here. They'll blink out again in a moment. Oh my god, so many Stalkers went down. You only really killed a siege tank there, so that was a lot of Stalkers lost for very little gained. 4 Stalkers for a tank. I mean, a tank kill is nice, but for 4 Stalkers it's not worth it. Fortunately, we'll be able to clean up this Banshee, but it's been a bit of a better start from FanTaSy here this game. He's been able to deal a little bit of damage, and he's definitely taken the better end of the trade so far. And sitting a few workers ahead as well. With Mules on his side, FanTaSy should be pretty content with the situation he finds himself in at the moment. Has Blizz decided how many new maps they'll be replacing? Because it kind of varies from season to season. I could see a solid 5+ new maps from this group. Usually what happens is we see 3 to 4 maps replaced a season, but the maps that get selected from this tournament will probably be selected over the next 2 seasons. So we probably see about 7 maps during the map pool. That's what they've done the last season or 2. They kind of rotate 4 maps in, then they have another season, because the TLMC kind of happens once like every 2-ish seasons of ladder maps. So we usually kind of get 2. Eventually we have like an entire map pool made up of these maps. But before then we'll kind of have like a bit of a crossover. So we'll probably have like the next season of ladder maps will not include any of these maps. It'll be the season after that I'll see the first few introduced, and then maybe after that a few more, and then we'll have another TLMC, and the kind of system usually repeats itself from there. Forge coming down in the main base. The few Stalkers are a little cautious here, just picking away at a couple of Marines. Charge finishes up and Immortal production continues. It's only 3 gases here from Classic, so very gateway. Kind of very gateway centric, right? Not very tech heavy. Only a single forge as well, with +2 armor coming in. Not sure if Classic's going to be able to do much to break FanTaSy down here, though, as he takes the 3rd CC. 2 siege tanks, the Widow Mines. It's a very good defensive position. Missile turret set up as well to turn away this Warp Prism. Oh my god. Warp Prism took a beating right there. And actually, the Raven chasing it. Okay, it's not going to chase it too far. Otherwise, might have been able to get a little bit more done. Couple SCVs down then is Stimpack, Combat Shields. +1 attack and +1 armor still coming into play. Good setup though, just to make sure this Warp Prism cannot get in here. I mean, immediately, one of Classic's plans to deal damage has just been completely nullified by a couple of missile turrets. So that's been really well done so far. Look, Banshee finally makes itself known again, but only for a couple more workers, so... A couple more workers going down. We do see this army still have Classic pressing through into the center of the map. FanTaSy going to be coming up here through the middle as well. Stalker's going out over to the right-hand side. A few SCVs going down as well. The Zals come charging in, so that Warp Prism eventually did make itself used. Recalls a good amount of them out, actually. Tries to come in to save a couple there as well, but the lift up was a little late. This main army of FanTaSy still coming up through the center. A few Stalkers out to the side. Again, Zealots and Sentries gathering together. 2 nice little blink forwards there, hitting the Raven, bringing it a little bit lower. Oh, anti-armor missile splits to minimize the damage taken from that, or the spread of the debuff. Trying to fight once again here. We do see the Observer's going to get found. The Raven giving the detection for the Widowmine to make that connection. Ooh, and then the Raven goes down. Nice little blink forwards there. So there is another Observer, so Widowmines can still be seen before they go off. Widowmines and Burrow again. The force field so far so good. So also going to turn and again trying to push this army back a little bit. A lot of Widowmines still set up here. On the bottom side we see again a lot of these Zealots as well, charging around and trying to see what else they can do. The Warp Prism is actually going to go down as well. They're actually picking off Ghosts though, these Zealots. Finally cleaned up by Widow Mines. See if he's still dropping. Zealots in this mineral line are absolutely just going crazy, so really kind of saving Classic's day at the moment. However, Zealots are charging through and there's still a few Widow Mines to go off, and those Widow Mines make pretty good work of the Zealots, so it's another set of Zealots from the bottom side though, and the Zealots are coming in before the Widow Mines are able to recharge. In fact, the Widow Mines have just been cleaned out. And as Classic continues to push forwards, he doesn't have a lot left, but it's mostly Marauders for FanTaSy, and because of that, the Immortals really do shine, and FanTaSy has to lift up and get out of there. With all the damage taken on the other side, FanTaSy has been struggling to rebuild a little bit. I mean, he's got a few units up. It's not like Classic has loads. But again, imagine FanTaSy he just lost 22 workers. Imagine FanTaSy's on 70 workers now. Amazing situation. But obviously, that's not happened. FanTaSy's now in a very tough scenario because Classic's way ahead on workers. And it feels like Classic's getting into a very comfortable spot. Although, that said, we do have 2 upgrades finishing for FanTaSy, and he has got a good amount of ghosts, which is somewhat the answer to this army composition of Classic. Pressing down to the bottom right hand side. What's up, OSC Esports coming in with the host? Hello guys. Thanks so much for hosting us. And as we do have the Zealots are pressing their way through the rocks here, this fight might be about to continue on once again. More Prism loads up a few Zealots. It's over the right side. An SCV pull from FanTaSy. We've lost so many of them. Is there even any left to pull? Apparently there is, as he kind of goes in. A lot of the SCVs caught in the back, so they're not even really doing their jobs. Widow Mines are taking a long time to burrow up here as well. Widow Mine, though, nice connection. Very nearly got a bunch of kills. Still this army of FanTaSy pressing up towards the upper left-hand side. And you see another couple of Zealots are finishing warping in. Another scan drops down. We're just going to be seeing the EMP drops as well. Archon's going to get hit by that. And again, the Widow Mine's just set up here as well. The Zealot's going to charge forwards once more. Few from the back as well. Widow Mine's going off all over the place. There's another set of Zealots finish up. They go charging in too. All over the shop. And actually, FanTaSy's army is starting to look maybe a little bit too large. Another few Zealots showing up though. Is there an EMP on those Zealots? There is, and the Zealots now... and the Zealots do get hit by it. FanTaSy, I think, has just broken through Classic here at the very end. Man, I wasn't convinced by the first little push forward with those SCVs, but... well, here we go. Bio army pressing forwards. A lot more probes going down here. And as those probes fall, we will see this Nexus going down as well. And FanTaSy is going to, well, at the very least put Classic to 3 bases. Classic is trying to rebuild an army, but, I mean, it's going to be tough. There is only 19 SCVs remaining in FanTaSy. If Classic can buy time, there is maybe some potential here. Another Archon morphs in. The Ghosts already dropping their EMPs. The Bio stimming forwards again. FanTaSy does not want to give Classic any time at all. Classic loses a few Zealots as they go charging forwards. And that Classic kind of has to go in once again. Widow Mines again are so good, connected on those Zealots. Now the probes are going to pull in too. FanTaSy, his army is getting hit, splashed by those Archons, but the Archon just drops a bit too quickly. Another Zealot or two coming through. A lot of probes going down as they are brought in to try and tank. Classic just can't get enough units. He's like, question mark face. What's going on? And FanTaSy just has enough. And that is going to be pretty much the game, I think, here is just see Classic taking a few moments to discuss. Classic says, how can I lose this game? I really into this game at number 3 as we have to the top right hand side, sorry, our Red Protoss player Classic, who really did kind of feel like he had that game in his hands. Unfortunately, kind of let it slip away just a little bit. In the bottom left, our Blue Terran player is FanTaSy. A series win here for him would be quite nice. Obviously, a defeat against Sue so far today has put Sue into a great position in general in the group, by the way. Sue 2-0 at the moment. So, yeah. Kind of a cool setup here so far. Again, we've got 6 best of 3s to come after this. So again, our rough order is going to be FanTaSy versus Patience, then Gumiho versus FanTaSy, Gumiho versus Classic, Gumiho versus Sue. Gumiho versus Patience after Gumiho Classic, Gumiho Patience, Gumiho Sue. And again, looking to wrap it up with Classic Sue. We might change the order a little bit. We're also going to be casting the Aces Rock qualifier today, so we don't want to go overboard on... we don't want to go like... We want to try and keep certain things in time. We don't want to be too late for the Aces Rock qualifier, so we'll be trying to show up for that as soon as possible as well. So, again, we'll try and make it up as the day goes by. So SCV's mining away here. Probe is blocking the command center from coming down on the natural. Why are Protoss afraid to pull their own probes in defense when they say the Terrans are pulling all the boys? I think the problem is with pulling the probes, you already have like a tanking line as the Protoss player. So like the probes only get in the way of the Zealots. And if the probes get in the way of the Zealots, you're actually hindering your army more than anything else. And obviously Classic had quite a lot of Zealots to work with. So The problem is, like, pulling the probes doesn't actually help that much in that regard, and where compared to it's the way the kind of the units interact with the kind of armies, right? SCVs are going to soak up quite a lot of shots of Immortals and Archons, right? Units that actually fire fairly slow. Whereas probes don't really soak up that many shots of Marines, which are firing super fast anyway. There's not a lot of overkill there. And that's why you don't see, like, Protoss all-ins where they pull the probes very often, because it's just, they don't go like, here we go, the probes are coming with me. It's much better off to just sort of rely on the fact that you are mining a lot more, and then you can hence keep warping in defensively as well, because you're still mining a lot. So you can still warp in a lot of units, and that's obviously intended to be what kind of helps you to defend. So, yeah, probes just aren't that great to pull into fights a lot of the time, to put it simply. You see probes pulled a lot in, like, Stalker battles, like, to help you defend an all-in PvP. They come in quite often, and that's because, again, like, Stalkers shoot kind of slow, and so the probes actually tank a lot of, you know, attack time from the Stalkers, for example, and stuff like that. Reaper was hanging out over this right-hand side. I was almost like, why doesn't he jump down there? This is just a little bit of dead space, of course. I forgot we've got our Mothership Core on this map. Yeah, our Mothership Core lying in its shrine. That's some, like, weird bobbly egg things. Wonder what hatches out of those. T-Gate is dropping down from Classic on the natural expansion. Blink on the way up. Getting set to go. What's up, Lambert's email saying just resub, but it didn't show up on the screen yet. Yeah, I'd have to share it in the chat. If you refresh the stream, it might give you an option to share it. Sometimes it takes a little while to show up. So, I do appreciate the resub though, dude. Cloak coming through here from FanTaSy, and we do have Raven initially, so we'll see if he actually does commit into the Banshee or not. FanTaSy pretty quick on just, like, double racks here, so already getting a Marauder out and quite a few bio units. Raven coming up as well. Classic going to throw down the third Nexus right away here, so getting that set up to go already, and the Reaper going to be sitting out on this watchtower. Depth coming through is going to be able to get a few shots off on that Reaper and able to chase it away down to the bottom side. And she is going to get the kill. So Reaper picked off. Some of the map control of FanTaSy now lost here. And there's the Forge going to complete in a moment or two. Charge also getting started on the Twilight Council. On our Observer. Another one of those coming up. So just creating a lot of map control here for that early blink. He's looking to take the map control of the Stalkers. We saw Zest with a very cool trick on this map, holding the watchtower and then blinking over this wall to get away when needed. As you're just going to be seeing those Stalkers pressing through, getting a shot on the bunker, but obviously not really much they can achieve here, unless SCVs are going to sit consistently on that bunker, which is very unlikely to happen. Oh, blast me. Sudden sneeze attack. Oh, there's a few more gateways come up. We're going to see that Immortal is about to complete as well. These medevacs from FanTaSy loading up and got to come through the bottom side of the map here. Good few units joined up together. A couple of Widow Mines are going to unburrow as well. And Supply Dribbles dropping down. Stim back, +1 attack. About to finish up as FanTaSy heads out into the center of the map at the moment. Adept and Stalkers hanging out on the far right hand side, and we are just going to be seeing FanTaSy. Again, coming around the top, another few Zealots warping in. I'm going to be joining up in a moment or so, and we do just have Stalkers. We'll do a little bit of damage. Zealots charging forwards, getting rid of a couple Widow Mines already. And a couple Force Fields dropping down here, and again, Zealots are going to be getting picked away at there just a little bit. +2 armor on the way up. Getting that set to go, so obviously getting that Forge ready to roll. And Dap getting chased away down the bottom right hand side. FanTaSy's still very committed just to 2 bases here. I mean, kind of similar to what we saw in the first game, only without the kind of the backdoor attack. Oh, well, this time it kind of felt like maybe the Widow Mines were going to get a little bit friendly fire done, but it doesn't turn out to be the case. A little bit of a move command, I feel, from Classic pressing forwards here. He's really eager just to get on top of this army. He's chased it so far forwards. I'm very surprised how well this army of Classic is doing. I absolutely believe that he was going to be in some trouble here. Now some extra zealots showing up. This is still pretty close. The Marauder Pulse reinforcement is definitely going to help out too. And I think Classic is just dead. I don't understand why Classic is fighting this far forward. FanTaSy is building a 3rd base on location actually. So yeah, why is Classic so far forward? Like, why is he fighting here instead of just hanging back? I kind of felt like his army was going to die a lot sooner, but there wasn't that much bio in FanTaSy's army from the armor upgrade done for Classic. That obviously helped a lot. Yeah, Classic just, I mean, it's just like the reinforcements should have been in that fight so much faster. And if the reinforcements were, if he was fighting next to a pylon, for example, the 2 Immortals are still there when the Zealots charge through, and that makes an insane difference. FanTaSy scans up this ramp. Oh my god, by the way, that Raven as well is like 1 HP. 1 Stalker Blink on top of that, and it is going to die. Storm isn't ready yet, as again, these couple of Widow Mines. Classic has to split away from those initially. And the Zealots just take a bit of a beating once again. The Widow Mines doing a lot right now as the probes are going to pull in to try and push this back. And anti-armor missile strikes absolutely everything. Can Classic survive to get a couple of storms up here? I mean, his Archons are surviving because he's given up like 20 probes or so. Brings his High Templars away from that Liberator. And this is FanTaSy going to take down Classic in this game. That does make this a rather intriguing little situation for this group, potentially. Classic is looking pretty good until now. And Storm on top of these Marines and Marauders. So, I mean, finally Storm is here. But at this point, you've lost your probe advantage, and at that point, it's very difficult to come back into the game as the Protoss. And you're also down on the army supply as well. Looks like we're probably going to have a FanTaSy victory here against Classic. Man, Classic's going to be kicking himself over that game number 2. Stalkers blinking in, just going to be seeing them trying to get rid of these Liberators, but too many Liberators, not enough Stalkers. Marauders very good at protecting this as well, I want to say. And it actually gets cleaned up. Wow. Stalkers, do they have blink? They do, so they can blink away from those Widow Mines. Okay, well, suddenly Classic cleans up this army. He's making a little bit of something happen here. Stalkers pushing down the bottom left-hand side. The few Medivacs hanging out in the far left. Obviously, they're kind of a bit disjointed, but reinforcements of FanTaSy should be enough. Classic, rebuilding from that point should be pretty difficult. I mean, again, 47 workers. He lost a lot trying to hold on here, but he is now going to have Storm, which is something to help out. He has got +2 armor against 1/1, which is also decent. What's up, Roddy? Thanks so much for the 32-month resub, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. The Stalkers, by the way, pressing up this ramp again. They're going to find themselves a Widow Mine kill before blinking away once more. Observer of Classic continuing down to this bottom left-hand side. Another few Zealots warping in, +1 attack on the Forge as well coming through. All of this getting set up as, again, this Bioforce loading into Medivacs and having to think as to where it could go. Yep, Rover Bay dropping down in the back of this main mineral line. So it's going to have a few Marines pressing forward. It's going to take this watchtower. Get one of them in the front there. And again, just this prism with a couple of High Templars in it. Classic survived, and that kind of worries me for FanTaSy, because I feel like whenever Classic is able to survive and get another chance, it usually goes pretty well. Let's see what these Storm Drops can do. Classic is such a lover of Storm Dropping, by the way. Like, it's something that you don't see many people go for. Gets himself 10 workers out of it. Not bad. Meanwhile, though, 2 drops go into the natural. Oh my god, Classic's army's in the middle of the map because there's also a drop in the 3rd. Oh no. Classic is so out of position. Recall. Oh, there wasn't any energy on this Nexus. There's only just now been energy on this one. He's already lost 13 probes, so from the damage that he did, which is really good, he now loses a Nexus. Makes it even more difficult for him to get back in this game. Oh man, he's not been mining for a little while. Classic gets supply blocked. His probes go back to mine. Oh, just as the 10 workers were so well kind of picked off there with that storm drop, it was like, okay, well, Classic, the worker counts are evening out. His army's looking okay. Okay, well, now I think Classic's just going across the map for a good all in. He is rebuilding the third Nexus, but, I mean, we're talking about it's going to be so difficult. Oh! Wow, actually catches this Warp Prism here. High Templar's inside of it going down. It's a hell of a catch. These Marines are still kind of abandoned on pretty low HP, though. It's this defense that's going to be so difficult to break. There's a bunch of Liberators here. The High Templar is obviously looking for Storms. The scan obviously reveals this before it really gets going. The Stalkers blink through. This is it. Already going for it. EMP hits on this High Templar, but I think they had enough energy for maybe a Storm anyways. Don't think it's going to matter, as we're going to be seeing Classic is in too much trouble. This army's going to go down. There's a drop as the killing the natural expansion as well. And this went wrong for Classic. GG is called. FanTaSy will take this series 2-1. Very well.